Okay, sure.
Okay, please give me a minute, because I'm going to do some recordings and some other steps. Okay, now we can start. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Venerables.
Good evening.
Welcome to our online public lectures.
Yeah,
Today,
thank you very much.
Venerables.
Good evening.
Welcome to our online public lectures. Today's lecture is hosted by Citta
Okay.
Gavesi, Center for
Yeah.
Mindfulness. I'm Reverend Nanasara. I'm the coordinator of Citta Gavesi Public Lectures. The Citta Gavesi is a mindfulness teachings and training center origin in Sri Lanka. And Citta Gavesi provides Buddhist psychology, psychotherapies, and counseling knowledge to people around the world, especially academics and academic researchers and students. And we will collaborate with a number of international organizations to achieve our visions of a world in which there is the universal access to mindfulness and a greater understanding and acceptability of the impact of mindful behaviors. Now we are building a retreat center and meditation room in our place. And then we will introduce our Buddhist mindfulness program to the public. Sooner or later, there will be the Buddhist psychotherapies and counseling service in Citta Gavesi Center. Additionally, we expect to give monthly online lectures like today on Buddhist psychology, psychotherapies, and counseling. For today's lectures, we are live streaming on our Facebook page. You can follow Citta Gavesi Facebook page for your records and future event information. Now I want to introduce today's lecturers, the founders of our Citta Gavesi, Professor Wasantha. Professor Wasantha was born in Sri Lanka, and he joined the University of California and earned his bachelor degree with first-class honors in the year 2000. He earned his master's degree again at the same university in 2002. Professor Wasantha obtained his PhD at the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies, the University of California, with the dissertations entitled Therapies of Mental Diseases, a study of psychoanalysis and behavioral therapy as depicted in Tripitaka literature. In 2002, he started his teaching career at the University of California as a temporary assistant lecturer for the departments of Pali and Buddhist study, and he became a permanent lecturer at the Buddhist and Pali University (BPU) of Sri Lanka from 2005 to 2009. In the middle of 2009, he moved to the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Study as a senior lecturer. In 2016, he was promoted to a professorship. He was teaching as a visiting lecturer professor at the Center of Buddhist Study, the University of Hong Kong and Buddha Dhamma Center of Hong Kong, and several Buddhist universities in Myanmar. Currently, Dr. Wasantha is a professor in the Department of Buddhist Culture, the PGMBBS of the University of California. So Dr. Wasantha researches Buddhist psychology, Buddhist counseling, and Buddhist psychotherapy. Articles like culture-bound syndrome, Buddhist psychological analysis, grief management in Buddhism for human development, Buddhism as a system of psychotherapy, psychotherapeutic values of Visuddhimagga for the enhancement of modern psychotherapy, and Dharma therapy in Buddhism, a Buddhist psychological reviews on counseling and psychotherapy. These are the research works of Dr. Wasantha. Professor, I think our participants are excited to listen to your lecture on psychology in Buddhism. Therefore, on behalf of our participants, I'd like to request you to start the lecture, sir. Please break the silence.
Yes, thank you very much, Venerable, for inviting me to this discussion. Okay, today our discussion is psychology in Buddhism. So when it comes to our topic, you can see the topic is mentioned as not the Buddhist psychology, but psychology in Buddhism. That's very important. I will explain later why I named this topic as psychology in Buddhism instead of Buddhist psychology. So when it comes to our topic, firstly, we can see that in the psychology, in Buddhism, we see its specific goal. It has its specific goal. So goal is happiness. So when it comes to this topic, we see that the psychology in Buddhism has a specific goal, that is happiness, freedom. There are so many similar terms. In Pali, it is mentioned there of that Nibbānam Paramang Sukha. So the very specific point that we need to understand that there is a perfect, clear goal to this psychology. So that's very important. Well established, well mentioned, well discussed, goal is there. That is the point we need to understand. So when it comes to this goal is concerned as the ultimate well-being. So then you are expected to understand that the ultimate well-being is prescribed as the goal. The goal is happiness, freedom. So it's very important. So then to reach to this goal, Nibbana, the gradual path is mentioned. So then you can see that goal is well prescribed, goal is well mentioned as happiness or freedom or emancipation. Then the clear path is, or the gradual path is well discussed in this psychology in Buddhism. So the other point is that this goal becomes the ideal well-being, and Buddhism has shown that the people, the spiritually developed people, has reached to this goal and they have experienced this goal. So this becomes very important. Why it becomes very important? This goal can be really achieved. And we have been taught that there are ideal characters, there are fully liberated beings, those who have really experienced, really achieved this goal. So, but when it comes to the Western psychology, so we can see that we cannot see the people who have really reached to that goal and mention that they have really grasped, they really experienced this goal. But when it comes to psychology in Buddhism, we can see that a large number of spiritually fully liberated beings, so they have really mentioned that they really grasp this goal, they really experience this goal, and they were able to get rid of almost all kinds of predicaments. That's very important. The other fact that we need to understand is that the path, the prescribed path to reach this goal, it becomes very practical path. So practical path, that's the threefold training. So if somebody starts to tread on the path gradually, so they can reach to this goal and they can really experience this goal. So this goal doesn't become a theoretical concept. It's a practical achievement. So then psychology in Buddhism explains us how to reach to this goal. That's very important. So this goal has been introduced to eliminate dukkha. So goal, that's the nibbana, becomes the everlasting solution to get rid of dukkha. There are considerable English translations for the meaning of dukkha by the modern academia. So modern academia has suggested several English translations, English words towards dukkha. But it's very difficult it becomes a difficult fact to translate the real meaning of dukkha into English. So according to my understanding, according to my research, I see that this dukkha is of threefold. So I would like to introduce a kind of new words, that is triune suffering. Triune suffering. Triune suffering, 3 in 1. So within this dukkha, there are 3 kinds of suffering together. That's the real, that's the explanation in the early Buddhist teachings. So when it comes to the dukkha, it has 3 kinds of dukkha together, 3 in 1. The first stage of the dukkha can be explained as authentic suffering or actual suffering. So the understanding on authentic suffering is really included in this dukkha. So when we translate dukkha into illness, so we cannot see that meaning is there. When we translate dukkha into anxiety, so we don't see that authentic suffering is there. So the second aspect of this dukkha becomes fabricated suffering. Fabricated suffering. So then when we see these English translations, we don't see that fabricated suffering is there. The third suffering is collaborative suffering. Collaborative suffering. That's the understanding in the psychology of Buddhism. So when you are encountering with kind of, for example, you can see you are encountering with a kind of physical pain. Then the psychology in Buddhism clearly explains that with reference to, in respect to that painful physical pain, in respect to that physical pain, you are really experiencing that physical pain. But due to your uncultivated mentality, due to your uncultivated behaviors, you are extending or fabricating this authentic suffering into very complicated level. This fabricated or extended sufferings are not real. You created. You here means your self-identification created this authentic suffering into fabricated level. But you don't limit this fabricated level into fabricated. There is another extension. You bring this fabricated suffering into the social context. Social context. So, for example, when the cancer patient is encountering with these painful experiences, he or she included her materials, elements within her or his conceptual world. He or she bringing almost all the concept, memories, past experiences, future expectations into that actual pain. We know that the patient is having the cancer. In respect to cancer, we know that there is the authentic, very actual pain. But client himself or herself adds more things into that. Then it becomes so fabricated suffering, extended suffering. Then later, the client brings this sufferings, fabricated sufferings to the family members, loved ones. Then all the family members and the loved ones, they also involved in that. They are also sharing the pain. Then it becomes the collaborative suffering in the social context or family context. Then Buddhism or the Buddhist psychological understanding in this dukkha related to these three kinds of suffering. That's why I mentioned in this discussion as this dukkha is of threefold, namely authentic suffering, fabricated sufferings, and collaborative sufferings. So the psychology in Buddhism takes into consideration these three kinds of suffering. Almost all these three kinds of suffering are encapsulated in the word dukkha. But when we are going to translate into just mere, the wordings, so we cannot see that such meanings are there. So psychology in Buddhism touches the solutions. Psychology in Buddhism concerns these three or triune suffering and their treatment. How really we can overcome this triune suffering? What is the way to overcome these sufferings? So we can discuss. So then the goal is well prescribed. That's the happiness. Happiness for what? So we are trying to provide the happiness instead of these three or triune suffering. Then it's very important to understand that the background of psychology in Buddhism. So there are a lot of discussions that a lot of discussions related to Buddhism. Some people, some scholars, they try to understand Buddhism as a culture, Buddhism as a Buddhist culture, Buddhism as a religion, Buddhism as a philosophy, so Buddhism as a psychology. So there are kind of considerable discussions. How really we can understand what the Buddhism is? So when it comes to the Buddha's contemporary period, we know that at that time there were 62 kinds of views, or we can say dogmas. Such dogmas can be divided into two, as Uchchedavada, Sassatavada. When it comes to the Uchchedavada, we see the philosophical background is there, bringing about kind of material perspectives towards the individual, bringing about material ideologies, material perspectives to understand the personality, but the term personality cannot be really used in the psychology of Buddhism. It's so westernized word, Western word, English words, personality, it's really derived from the Western psychology. Instead of personality, I suppose the better word is character. Character, because when it comes to the personality, in reference to the Western psychological understanding, within the personality, there are some kinds of things that cannot be changed. Heredity cannot be changed. Chromosomes cannot be changed. But in accordance with the fundamental teachings of the early Buddhist teachings, everything is being changed. In a flux of change, everything can be transformed. In accordance with the Sutta literature, once Buddha takes very tiny dust into his finger, pointing it to the Venerable, asked that, you can see this tiny dust. There is in this sort of little portion in the human existence that cannot be changed. Everything can be changed. It's a very significant point, intrinsical significant point related to psychology in Buddhism, taking very subtle tiny dust, very subtle tiny portion, dust into Buddha's finger, raising it to the Venerables, mentioned that there is in this sort of tiny thing that can be accepted as permanent in this individuality. There is in this sort of permanent thing within this individuality. It means the individuality can be changed, individual existence can be changed. So then the term personality is not related to psychology in Buddhism. So then when it comes to this philosophical understanding, or the material understanding, or the Uchchedavada, the existence of the individuality, they use kind of material phenomena to understand human existence. So they accept mind and body mechanism as one unity. So they say that body is the mind, mind is the body. When this body finished, there is in mind. So when somebody dies, so we cannot find the mind. So bringing about so materialistic points of view, some philosophies, they had interpreted their understanding on the existence of the individuality. So when it comes to Buddhism, we cannot see such sort of philosophical ideas within the Buddhist teachings on the human existence. So the other one, Sasatavada. So they accepted kind of eternalism. So the eternalism is there. So they accept that the individuality, the human existence, it has dualistic existence. So though the body is almost finishing, dying, when the body is finishing, dying, so the consciousness or the soul will transmigrate into another new existence. So we see the dualistic aspects are there. But we cannot see such dualistic aspects that have been used, employed by the Buddha to explain the individual existence. On the other hand, when we try to see this sort of religions, so we see there are so many rites and rituals, some practices. So they introduce kinds of rites and rituals there to understand the atmosphere, to understand kind of human existences. They introduce these rites and rituals as the ways and means to get rid of sufferings and so on. So Buddhism has not introduced such rites and rituals instead of the ways and means to get rid of the problems. Then what is really Buddhism? It's a kind of practical path or way of life to understand the human existence and to lead it in a better way. So, but we see that some philosophical aspects are there, but we cannot, by looking at that, some specific philosophical aspects, we cannot limit Buddhism into a philosophy, rejecting other things. But when it goes to the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, we see kind of rituals, rites are there, but they are not belonging to the mere clinging into rites and rituals. But by looking at such rites and rituals, we cannot limit the Buddhism into a kind of religion. But we see more psychological points in Buddhism. By looking at these very specific psychological points, so we cannot confine Buddhism into a psychology. But we see some psychology in Buddhism. So we need to understand why we see these aspects, because this is the way of life. Buddhism becomes a way of life. So within this way of life, we can see the realities. Something are related to philosophy, rites and rituals, and the kind of psychological aspects. But more important thing in the Buddhism, that is the expositions, advocations to lead our life in a righteous ways and means, Dhammacharya, Samacharya. How you can lead your life in a better way. That's very important. So when it comes to the Buddhist understanding on the body, the mind, and their reciprocal interaction, it's very important. So within the psychology in Buddhism, we can see that Buddhism doesn't accept the individuality as a materialistic component or a kind of a metaphysical, the component. So Buddhism understands the individuality, the existence of the individuality as a reality. So within this reality, almost all the things which belong to reality are there. That's very important. So then when Buddhism wants to explain the individuality, so Buddhism looks at its material existence. The term is rupa. corporeality. So with the help of such terminologies as Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, hardness, mobility, air, everything, and the phlegm, bile, air, and other 32 anatomical parts, So Buddhism understands it's real materialistic or a material existence, but they are not permanent. And when it comes to the mentality, Buddhism understands its realistic elements. Feelings are there, perception are there, volitional constructions are there, thinking patterns are there, considerations are there, attentions are there, conceptual polymerizations are there. That's the nature. So we, without looking at only one component, we cannot confine Buddhism into that component. It's not the way. So when we just look at the psychological or mental aspects, we cannot just limit the Buddhism into a kind of metaphysical or a kind of more psychological things, kind of metaphysical aspect, kind of metaphysical way of looking at the things. Not only the mental things, corporeality things are there. This is the reality. But very significant thing is that Buddhism sees the reciprocal interaction in between this material and the mental things. Nama rupa paccha vijnanam, vijnana paccha nama rupa. Not only physical things, not only material things. And the linkage, that's the mind. So when it comes to the Visuddhimagga, we see the last part of this anatomy as the brain, Mattalunga. Why Buddhism has, in the Visuddhimagga, why the brain has been given the last part? We know that's very important. But within the psychology in Buddhism, we can see that Buddhism gives the priority to the mentality. So Buddhism understands both aspects and their reciprocal interaction. In this reciprocal interaction, Nama Rupa Paccha Vijnanam, Vijnana Paccha Nama Rupa. Nama means the mental functions. Rupa, physiological basis, physiological functions, but the Vijnana is in between these two components. So then Buddhism says, mind uses the brain to make the mind. So brain cannot function its own. The mind needs to be there. But within this reciprocal interaction, Buddhism gives the priority to the mind. Mano pubbangama dhamma. Mind is the forerunner. So then, very important thing. So as this is my first lecture, I am not going to bring more suttas exposition into this. So I need to simply explain the things without adding more suttas exposition and the Pali terminologies, because we have different types of students from various parts of the world. So, but more important thing, just listen this sutta. There's a sutta, a specific sutta called Chulla Malunkaya Putta. I think Venerable Nandacharya will put it into the chat box. Within this Chulla Malunkaya Putta sutta, we can see that Venerable Malunkaya Putta comes and asks the Buddha 10 kinds of questions. Normally it is mentioned there of that unanswered questions. Buddha at the very beginning mentioned that I don't wish to give the answer. Then Buddha in this context, very context, explains why he doesn't wish to give the answer because your questions are not related to this world. Especially your questions are not related to my goal. So you can see the last part of the sutta. It is very clearly mentioned there of that. My main goal is not to discuss the philosophical matters. I don't wish to waste my time having hair-splitting philosophical discussion, hair-splitting philosophical matters, sophisticated matters. I don't wish to do so. It's up to the philosopher. Even I don't wish to waste my time discussing mere rites and rituals. It's not related to my goal. My main goal is to discuss really dukkha, suffering. That's the common usage I am using as suffering, but dukkha is not the suffering. It has three aspects as we discussed at the outset. So Buddha in this sutta very clearly explains that my main goal is to discuss dukkha and their causes and the way to get rid of these suffering. Symptoms, diagnosis, prognosis, and the treatment. So then that's why Buddha did not accept those material, ideological phenomena to discuss the existence of the reality of the individuality. Instead of that, Buddha has used dependent coordination theory to understand the reality. In that explanation, instead of accepting the soul or rejecting the soul, Buddhism gives us the knowledge to change our wrong notion, wrong understanding on the self. That's very important. Then it's very clear that Buddhism has, the psychology in Buddhism has its own goal and the very specific, the focus, that's focus centered on the dukkha and the way to eliminate, the way to get rid of the dukkha. The way becomes threefold training. Threefold training. So this is very important. This is very important. So we know that almost all, as the students, we are well aware of this threefold training. But when we try to understand the psychology in this threefold training, then we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful. So then we see that as in the threefold training, the first one becomes the morality. When it comes to the morality, what's the morality? What's the morality brings to us? So morality, when it comes to the morality, we see the very specific things related to morality. What are these specific things related to morality? The first thing is that when you are going to follow, accept morality, you need to change your previous behaviors. You need to adhere into that precept. It becomes a strict code of behavior. You promise to follow it. You are not allowed to break it. And you need to continue it for a certain period of life until you achieve some results. And most important thing related to the morality is really very important thing is really related to the morality. So morality is to be followed in a gradual way, in a gradual consequence, in a step-by-step method. So if I am bringing once again a kind of sutta, Venerable Nandacharya will share that sutta, that is Samanya Pala Sutta, the second sutta of the Digha Nikaya. In this sutta, we see a specific character. Specific character is King Ajasattu. King Ajasattu killed his father, and he later became a moral anxiety patient. He consulted, he was given kind of variety of, the therapies, counseling supports, but he was unable to get rid of it. Then finally he was directed to Buddha by the royal physician Jivaka. So Samanya Pala Sutta is of so many aspects. There are cultural things, philosophical matters, the contemporary very great 6 teachers and their teachings are there, you can see. But when it comes to our subject area, psychology in Buddhism, we can see the related thing. Then the client is the King Ajasa. Being infatuated by the libido or desire, he killed his father. Then later he suffered a lot from ideas, I did the wrongdoing. So then this inculcation, this sort of, the immoral thoughts finally led him to get this moral anxiety. Then finally he was directed to the Buddha. Then we know that at the very beginning, King Ajasattu asked the things which are not really related to his issue. His problem, his dukkha was in this very context, moral anxiety. But at the very beginning, at the outset, what he asked from the Buddha, no any relevance to his main issue. This is the nature of the clients. Buddha knew it. Buddha knew the problem. But Buddha brings the relevance of the sila. Buddha asks some relevant questions from the king that, see, one of you a laborer, he was so fed up with providing the royal duty towards you. Then he himself thinks that as the king, I also need to lead a very satisfactory life. Why I don't change my life? He changed his life. He came to Buddhist order, became a monk. Now he is leading his life peacefully. Then Buddha asked that, when you see your laborer as a monk next day, what you are doing? Are you ordering to bring him back to your palace? King says, no, I am not doing it. Why? Now he is not the laborer. He is not a laborer. Now he is a monk. Then Buddha asks, what you are doing? I am worshipping him. Why he is being worshipped by you? Because he is leading a new life. Then Buddha brings the psychological elements from the sila, morality. If you want to change your life, you need to change your life from bad to good. That's the point. You need to adhere into a strict code of behavior. When you are adhering into that, you are not allowed to break it with a great faith, saddha. It's very specific psychological point in Buddhism. We know that when it comes to the Western psychology, they are using so many things which are related to body. They even understand mind as the byproduct of the body, brain. So we know the Sigmund Freud as the neurologist, bringing about so medical concepts, theorization. So they have constructed their psychology. So neurological, physiological, biological components are there. If we are trying to compare Buddhism with the Western psychology, we cannot do it. We cannot do it. We should not do it. It's just like from cheese to charcoal, charcoal to cheese. We cannot do it. So we cannot have an integration, amalgamation with these two different disciplinaries. We should not do it. They have different perspectives. They concern brain. In the Buddhist concern of the individuality, Buddhism gives the fire to the mind. But we need to see, we need to get the advantages from the both disciplinaries to bring about a better solution to our clients. If we are going to read Buddhism from the Western psychological perspective, we are harming to the subject. We are harming to the subject. But we need to understand both disciplinaries and to see their own intrinsic natural elements. Then we can use these both disciplinaries to bring about the better solution for our client. In this sense, we need to follow these elements, psychological elements in early Buddhism. So back to the discussion once again. So in this sutta, Samanyapala Sutta, Buddha brings very significant, considerable psychological points to our subject area psychology. Then once again questioning that moral anxiety patient, King Ajasattu, then Buddha says that if you are changing your life from bad to good, you are having the benefits on the spot. Within this very context, you are having results. Why? You are leading moral principles, you are leading moral aspects, you are following moral components. Then you are learning new things. You are experiencing new things for the first time of the life. So when you are having these new learnings, new experiences for a certain period of life, they become so concrete experiences in your mind. So Buddhism says that this is the way to transplant a new brain. We know that Buddha transplanted a new brain for the serial killer Angulimala. How we can transplant a new brain? So we need to start from the beginning. We need to start from the foundation. Foundation becomes the sila. Sila becomes the foundation of the mindfulness. Every nook and corner of the world, we see the very commercialized word as the mindfulness. But what is the meaning of this mindfulness in respect to early Buddhist teachings? Buddhist teachings, foundation becomes the morality. You need to adhere into that. So when you are adhering into this context, so you are practicing two specific things, that is Veramani and Samadhyana. You are refraining from doing bad and you are applying making good things. And more significant thing is that you are continuing this, the faith with the faith. When you are continuing this to certain period of time, you are adhering to that mental structure, mentally structuring. So then for the first time, you are having more new experiences, healthy mental attitudes, and you are establishing them. They become concrete experiences. So then you are having new neural cells. This is the way to get the new neural cells. As a result of having concrete neural cells, so it becomes the neuroplasticity. This is the way to transform or transplant, new brain instead of our bad brain. The starting point becomes the sila. But how you can do it? You need to do this. You need to continue this in a gradual process. So when you see the Samanyapala Sutta, you can see Buddha introduces 3 types of aspects of sila. So lesserly, the simple aspects, the middle aspects, so advanced aspects, simple, middle, and advanced. We cannot suddenly change our chemistry inside, chemistry of body and the mind. If we are going to suddenly change, there will be bad results. Slowly you need to do it. Gradually you need to do it. It's very important. So then, in this way, Buddha adds more things, more psychological components into this sila to change your behavior. So behavioral transformation process is there. How to transform your behavior from bad to good. You need to adhere into that. You need to promise into that. Faith is to be there. You are not allowed to break it up. You need to continue it for a certain period of time. You need to be familiar with healthy mental attitudes. You need to establish them. You need to concrete them. Then your foundation is so strong. This is the way to change the brain. For example, if you are bringing this to a diabetic person, sugar issues are there, diabetic. So the other specific thing is that sila is to be amended. So we know that due to our practices as lay or monk, we have been prescribed relevant silas in Buddhism. As a lay person, 5 precepts, or in special occasions, 8 or 10 precepts for a short period of time. Once again, you can come back to your lay life. If you are a monk, there are prescribed related silas. That's regarding your practice, what you are doing. That's personal. So, but the more important thing is that when you are practicing your 5 precepts, but you need to add regarding the context. Now you are a diabetic person, then 5 precepts is not enough. Then you need to understand the very important things of 5 precepts to your diabetic issue. Veramani and Samadhi. Now you are refraining from taking unhealthy foods. You are practicing just to take the foods on time. So this is very important. We know that, we are well aware of that, 5 precepts at the very beginning. This teaching was belonged to the Jainism. Buddha adopted it, giving some, the additions, making some amendments. Buddha introduced it to us. But when you are understanding these 5 precepts, you can see that it becomes so practical path, practical approach. It should be amended. You should not limit 5 precepts into 5 precepts, but you need to add more things regarding the issue, regarding the context. Why? You need to see the addition, extension in the Samanyapala Sutta. It has 3 steps: simple, middle, and the more advanced. It means that you need to gradually develop it. You should not limit your 5 precepts into 5 precepts. You need to come to the second middle stage. You need to add more advanced things, though you are a lay person. When it comes to a diabetes and to other illnesses, so then you need to amend it. Such things are there. Suppose that now you have transformed your mentality and you have experienced and you have learned healthy mental attitudes. Within that mentality, you need to start another pathway to transform your mental functions. So we know that at the very beginning, I mentioned that there are three kinds of suffering. The second one, I named it as fabricated suffering. Buddha says this is the most dangerous suffering in the world, not the authentic suffering. Cancer is the cancer. But when you are adding more things from your conceptual world into this cancer, it becomes worse. It becomes a very worse, very dangerous precipice. Dangerous mountain. When you are falling down from a dangerous mountain, what will be the bad results? There will be very serious psychosomatic issues there. There will be very serious physical and psychological damages there when you are falling down from a huge precipice or a dangerous mountain. Buddha says, when you are fabricating your authentic, actual suffering into that fabricated level, you will have very dangerous physical and psychological sufferings, damages. How we are fabricating that authentic suffering into this fabricated, extended level? That's our mentality, the mechanism of the mentality, how the mind is functioning. We have not observed it. We are naturally, intrinsically overwhelmed by this mentality. What are the things within this mentality? How we are adding more things into the reality to make it unreality. So when you are having the feeling, Vedana, it's so natural, but you misperceive it due to your mental, due to your nature, due to your untrained nature, uncultivated nature. You are misperceiving it, adding your previous experiences and so on. We see that in between, in some deep-rooted psychological expositions, we see that in between passa, a contact, when you are contacting a kind of pain, before this pain to be pursued, so in between Vedana and the perception, in between feeling and the perception, in some occasions, Buddha adds Vijnana. So the first one is the feeling, let's say pain, and the consciousness, then the perception. What is the psychological point, value, adding this consciousness in between feeling and the perception to explain that we are with the consciousness, with the previous memories, future expectation, past painful memories, we are adding more things into this actual pain. Then we misperceive the actual pain. So then Buddha says that perception, volitional construction, thinking or thoughts, automatic thoughts, vitakka, vichara, consideration, conceiving manjana, conceiving, and the conceptual proliferation, extension, objectification. So this is the natural tendency of the untrained individuality to fabricate reality into unreality. This is the very dangerous process due to our untrained behavior, untrained conduct. How we can stop it? Because this process is suddenly happens. This is the process what the Buddha compares to a monkey-wonky mind, unsettled mind. So our mind is going here and there. It goes far away because it has a specific body. Wherever it wants to go, it can go, it can fly, it can land. So this monkey-wonky mind becomes the very serious, dangerous issue. How we can stop it? We should concentrate on a specific object. We should keep our mind on a specific object. Concentration. Concentration. I know that, I see that, I even studied the modern mindfulness practices. They highly emphasize vipassana. They highly emphasize mindfulness, but very considerable, significant psychological aspects are in concentration. This is the liberation through mind. Before we come to the liberation through insight, we need to settle down this monkey-wonky mind. Monkey-wonky mind. How to calm down this monkey-wonky mind? We need to firstly understand this fabrication process, clinging into this volitional construction and the relevant fundamentals of this fabrication process. We need to calm down it. We need to settle down it. We need to bring this unsettled mind into settled mind. How we can do it? Keeping the mind on very specific subject which is so related to the character type. Character type. In the modern discussion, we see medication and meditation. So medication or meditation. I gave a specific lecture for our Sri Lankan community. Medication or meditation. Why I gave that sort of discussion, I experienced some the unusual things. It means some people, they are using these materials, these fundamentals without realizing their actual background. So meditation cannot be used in the field of psychotherapy without specific understanding and specific training. If you are not a psychologist or counselor or psychotherapist, you are not allowed to use this meditation as a treatment. But I see some people, they are used to go to some meditation center and they get some consultation regarding their psychological issues. Very bad. I have realized that some meditators, they are having some hallucination, delusions, schizophrenic issues. Serious. So we have to be very careful. So when we are practicing concentration, we need to understand the character type and we need to relate the very relevant object of the concentration. So normally we can discuss, normally we can prescribe for the general people, for the practitioners. But we should not forget that it is very worthwhile to understand that when we are going to use this in the field of psychotherapy, counseling, or related to the clients, they are not normal people, they are the clients. So how we can prescribe this meditation without having any understanding, practicing, and the clinical experiences? Very dangerous. And on the other hand, though you are a psychotherapist, well-experienced counselor, if you have not personally practice this meditation and its therapeutic values, significances, you are not allowed to use this meditation as a therapy. So these are the things what we need to discuss in this topic. So without establishing, without having a good mentality, without constructing a good mentality with the help of the morality, you cannot change your monkey mind. And when you go to the deep-rooted psychological principles of this Samanyapala Sutta in your lesser times, you can read it. In this very Sutta, Buddha explains that though you are going to halting this process, Buddha highly emphasized the psychological value of stopping this process at the Madhupindika Sutta. So at the Vitakka Santana Sutta, we are going to discuss it. How to halt it? Very difficult. We are intrinsically, naturally used to perform these mentalities. So when we are trying to concentrate on a very specific object prescribed by the therapist, it becomes very difficult for us to use it. So that's why at the very beginning of the concentration, it is discussed there that firstly, you need to enjoy it. Vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata. Firstly, you need to enjoy it. You are not, at the outset, you are not going to transform your monkey mind into a very settled, cannot be done. We are the human being who need to enjoy our life. Sukha kamani bhutani. Naturally, we seek sensual and sexual pleasure. That's what the Buddhist psychology understands. Sukha kamani bhutani. We reject repulsive things. Dukkha patikkhula. Amaritu kama. We have the desire to live. We have the desire to have the everlasting life, long-lasting life. We have the desire to not to die. This is the nature. With this nature, when we are going to stop our monkey mind, very difficult. That's why in this concentration practices, Buddha brings some very important psychological points to understand that firstly, the client is to be given some enjoyments. Vitakka, vichara, the trances, when you are enjoying the trances, you enjoy. With this enjoyment, you are healing your suppressed wants and needs. If we have suppressed our unsatisfactory wants and needs, keeping with unsatisfactory wants and needs, we can transform this monkey mind into very settled. Firstly, we need to understand. Firstly, we need to satisfy our unsatisfactory wants and needs, what we have suppressed. So please read this sutta, Samanyapala Sutta. Samanyapala Sutta says that when you are bringing your mind on very specific object, then for the first time you will enjoy. It's just like water which is coming from the pond itself and it is flowing to the outside. So when you are practicing, when you are keeping your mind on this very object, so internally the bliss comes. Internally happiness comes to your skin, your somatic body. You enjoy it. It's just like water. It's just like a pond itself gets the water from the internal resources, and the water will be filled up and the water will go to the outside. Very nice parable is there. This is the way to transform monkey mind into very settled mind. without having a settled mind, how we can observe our mind as it is, how we can come to the mindfulness, how we can have the full mind. So then we can come to the full mind. Then we can come to the Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, especially Samma Sati, how we can get the right concentration, right mindfulness. Samma Sati, we discuss the right concentration, how we can get the right mindfulness with the right concentration. What is the right mindfulness? So when it comes to the discussion of the Vipassana, we know that mindfulness on body, mindfulness on feeling, mindfulness on mind elements, and mindfulness on Dhamma. Here, to get the full mind, we need to practice very carefully mindfulness on body and mindfulness on feeling. These are the two components that help us to get the full mind. When it comes to the mindfulness on feeling, we are really observing mind instead of having full mind. With the full mind, we are observing the mind, means the mindfulness on mind element. We cannot observe the mind, Chittanupassana, without full mind. How we can get the full mind? With the help of practicing mindfulness on body and mindfulness on feeling. With this full mind, that is myself. With this full mind, you are having healthy myself. With this healthy myself, what you experience from the mindfulness training, you are observing your unhealthy myself. Two myself are there. When you're observing your mind and its unhealthy mental attitudes, you will see the causes, root causes leading to dukkha. So this is the path. Path is of threefold. It is to be practiced gradually. In the future, in our future discussions, we are going to discuss one day, a 2-hour lecture only for the morality, 2-hour lecture only for a concentration. This is just introduction, short introduction. So this is the Dhamma, what the Buddha really wanted to use to settle down dukkha. This becomes the Dhamma therapy, Dhamma patikara. The Pali term is Dhamma patikara, Dhamma therapy. Dhamma therapy is centered on this threefold training for elimination of triumph suffering. Triumph suffering. That's the very important things what we need to understand. So this is the path in Buddhism. These are the psychological values in Buddhist teachings. But we cannot limit Buddhism only into a psychology. It has some psychological values. In this topic, we just concern only that psychological values. Okay, then, according to our discussion, then we can see that through the sila, we can change our behavior. It becomes the behavioral transformation process. When it comes to the concentration, it helps us to change our ego ideal into ideal ego. Intrinsically, we have ego ideal, so selfish, so narcissistic desires, narcissistic principles, narcissistic wants and needs are there. So you are selfish. You are infatuated by desire and hatred. You are struggling in between desire and hatred. Then you are being deluded. When you are being deluded, you cannot see the reality as it is. This is the nature of ego ideal. So selfish. So when you are being deluded by this desire and hatred, when you are being infatuated by ego ideal, almost all the time you are having monkey-wonky mind. It has so suppressed desires. It has so suppressed painful memories. Firstly, we need to settle these things of the ego ideal. Then slowly we can bring this ego ideal to ideal ego. That's the mind of the liberated individuals. We can borrow the word from the Western personalities. If you want to have a liberated personality, fully enlightened personality, firstly, you need to change your ego ideal into ideal. Arahant. They are the parables. They are the ideal character who really get the benefits from the psychology in Buddhism. They really enjoyed this goal. This goal is not a mere theoretical concept. It really can be enjoyed. When we are enjoying the Nibbana, it has its own psychological and physiological benefits. The biological transformation of the Nibbana, physiological transformation of the Nibbana, brain transformation of the Nibbana is there. When it comes to the brain, especially when you are practicing the for mindfulness practices, it's really it has very important relationship with the brain. Even if we are using some brain sciences and there are theories, we can understand. It's not. I'm not trying to compare the mindfulness practices with the brain, but to understand the subject. You know that we have lizard brain, limbic brain, and neocortex. So when it comes to especially the neocortex, it's the brain which is responsible for our cognition, our understanding, and so on. So when you come to the Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana, it's not a just mere practice. You psychologically and you physically, you really experience this understanding, this transformation of the mind is not just mere theoretical concept. We know that it is stated in the Buddhist suttas when a person reached to Nibbana. So they have already stopped their seminal discharge. No seminal discharge are there. They are not seeing any nightmares, no dreams. They have not even they have not even hidden any subtle impurities in their at least unconscious level. Totally, fully liberated. Reaching to this ideal mental well-being, they are sharing the benefits of this Nibbana. So it is not just mere theorization, theoretical concept. It's really a experience that you need to enjoy in this patang long body. With this patang long body, you need to realize it within this patang long body, and you can experience it through your psychosomatic experiences. How you can reach to that? Firstly, you need to transform your ego ideal into ideal ego. Suddenly you cannot come to ideal ego. Then change your ego ideal. Your impurities, your feelings, your volitional constructions, your thinking, your consideration, your attention, your conceptual proliferations. These are the fundamentals of the ego idea. When you are struggling, when you are being infatuated, overwhelmed by these things, you cannot reach to that ideal ego. Firstly, practice the concentration. Then you can come to experience the ideal ego, but it has its own 4 methods. Firstly, you need to have full mind with the help of mindfulness on body and mindfulness on feeling. Then you are having full mind. With this full mind, you are having myself, which is related to unhealthy myself. This is the combat This is the war. This is the spiritual war to myself. So we know that before the Buddha's enlightenment, it is nicely graphically explicated in the suttas that a kind of war. So I think in a specific sutta, Buddha explains the nature of schizophrenia, hallucinations, delusions. So when you are being overwhelmed by this mental process, you are constructing your thoughts, you are believing your thoughts, you are believing your hallucinations, you are believing your delusions, then you see it. So when you are adhering into this process, you start to believe them, hear them, and see them. Then you are saying that I am seeing these things and these things. People say, are you mad? But he says, yes, I am seeing. Then Buddha says that, yes, really, this person is really seeing them, but others can't see it because this person is so used to this process. As a result of practicing and adhering into this process, now he can visualize, now he can see, he can even taste, he even feel the aromas, but they are not real, but he feels it. And he sometimes tastes some unnecessary taste is there, very bad. Others cannot accept it, but he really tastes it as bad. Why? This is the nature of schizophrenia. This is the way how you are fabricating unreal things into the real things. So you can watch the movie Beautiful Minds long ago, but you can understand. Please watch Beautiful Mind. How we are constructing our unhealthy thoughts, how we are being victims of our own unhealthy thoughts, how we are being led by later these thoughts. We cannot get rid of it. We cannot get rid of them if we are not all ready to transform them. How we can transform them? Is it only with the medication, antidepressive drugs, or the related drugs to control the schizophrenia? No, we need the medication. That's the actual level. There are some actual levels of the schizophrenia due to brain chemistry and other things. But we need the loving kindness there, compassion. We know that the client is really experiencing such auditory things, he's visualizing some things, hearing some things, they are really real to them. But if we are saying that, no, are you mad? We need to have the compassionate sympathy and empathy, and we need to live with them. Slowly, we need to transform them. You can watch that movie. In our previous discussions, we can discuss what is this hallucination. In accordance with this, Buddha did not want to use the term hallucinations. If the Buddha is in the present moment, I am very sure that Buddha is using this terminology, but using that religious philosophical terminologies which was so familiar to the people, Buddha used that language. Buddha didn't. That's why Buddha used. So then we come to the ideal ego. I'm just using the Western terminologies to understand. Just to understand, that's the value of the Western psychology. But I am not going to limit or read the Buddhist psychological points, but just to understand. So then we can come to the cognitive transformation, wrong cognitive training, how we can change wrong cognitive training into right cognitive training. So my point is that if we are going to discuss a kind of subject as Buddhist psychology, Buddhist psychotherapy, Buddhist counseling, at the very beginning, you are expected to understand these points very clearly. Then we can. That's our hope. That's my aim. That's why I started this Center for Mindfulness, Citta Gavesi. So In the future, I hope to give some discussion, some practice, some training related to this area. Okay, next one. So this is the application of psychology in Buddhism. Very important. So practical. It's not just a mere theoretical discussions. It's not just a mere philosophy. It has real practical sense. This is the individual, the first one, individual. This is the psychosomatic nature of the individuality. Individuality. Buddhism, with the help of the dependent coordination, instead of the individual, Buddhism understands individuality. This is the nature of the individuality. These are the first one, somatic background of the individual. There are so many things later we can discuss. In our future lectures, we can discuss. Rupa. This is the corporeality of the human existence. And these are belonging to the mentality. Feeling, perception, disposition, and construction. When we are having the psychological clinging into this psychosomatic background, then the self-identification is there. That's my subject to involvements. That's my subject to reaction into this psychosomatic existence. Clinging, upadana. So when you have the clinging, you are superstructuring the superstructure, superimpression. You are superstructuring the real psychosomatic background into unreal. Clinging. Then you are having with this clinging, the clinging is being supported by the other impurities like desire, tanha, mana, ditti, desire, conceit, and the views. So this ditti, this wrong view, especially the clinging, this is my psychological involvements into this psychosomatic unity. This psychological involvements or a clinging is being further supported by desire, tanha, mana, measurement, superiority complex, inferiority complex, equality complex. Mana, I am measuring, I am superior, I am equal, I am worse. That's the mana, measuring. Don't forget that this mana is remaining until you are attaining into Nibbana. Though you are an enlightened being, you are not a stream winner. Once eternal, though you are a non-returner, now you are at the edge of attaining to Nibbana, still you are being infatuated by very subtle narcissistic residues. Buddhism has such psychology to scrutinize, to scan our mentality. So, Buddhism says that how you are fabricating with this clinging. What is this clinging? It is being infatuated by other impurities. What are these impurities? Desire, mistaken beliefs, and the conceit or the measurement. What is the psychological nature of this conceit? It is remaining until you are reached to the Nibbana. Then you are being misled by it. Though you are a kind of enlightened, you are not uninstructed, you are not untuitioned, but you are being infatuated by these very subtle narcissistic residues. To observe them, you need to have a full mind. Then you can understand. Sometimes you are having some kinds of psychosomatic issues due to these narcissistic residues. So that's why in the first discourse of the Buddha advocates us clinging into these five aggregates becomes the psychological clinging into this five aggregate is the suffering. That is the emphasis. Buddha highly emphasized what is the suffering. This is the more dangerous suffering. Actual pain is to be managed by the medication. Medication. We know that some actual things related to schizophrenia, depression, the brain chemistry, and the related responses and the nervous system and their messages from the brain. We know that the brain function, the chemistry is there. Such unbalanced things are to be controlled by the medication. That's the actual level, authentic level. It is not so dangerous. Buddha says the more dangerous thing is adding from your perceptual and conceptual world into this actual. Then you are having samsara. This is the way how you are extending samsara. New becoming. When you are adding more things, you are having more new becoming, more re-becoming, more existences within this patang-long body. The more dangerous thing is this clinging. Clinging into what? Clinging into your somatic and to these psychological components. Then when you are clinging into your form, it becomes the basis of psycho. So psycho, it should be psycho and somatic. Psycho, and if not, it gives another sense. Very sorry for that. Psycho and somatic form. Then Buddhism understands feelings as a sickness. Yes, even though you are having psychological or mental illness, you feel it. This disease comes to you as a feeling. Whether it is psychological or physical, you feel. You get the pain. So the feeling becomes a sickness. This is the actual ground. But to this authentic sickness or the feeling, you are adding more perception into that. Provocation. You are enhancing. You are progressing. You are developing. That's a provocation of the sickness. Disposition, you are constructing it further and further and further. Then finally you are coming to a superstructure. I am a patient. I am a cancer patient. Cancer patient is at the body, somatic body. But these things are you are adding, these things are your additions. What you have added into real cancer. What is the duty of the Dhamma therapy in relation to a cancer patient? Not to deal with the authentic. That's up to the cancer specialist. These things up to us. In one place, one lay person asked from the Buddha, Venerable Sir, we are lay people. How being a lay people, we can bring this Dhamma therapy to a lay person? Then Buddha says, you have to be a very advanced Dhamma follower. Then you can be a Dhamma therapist. In the future, we are going to discuss these things. So this is the psychosomatic reality and the self-involvement, psychological involvement. Then Buddha says, not the panchakanda, not the five aggregate. Clinging, not the five aggregate is suffering, but clinging into this five aggregate is suffering. Very different to compound. Even Buddha and Arahant, they maintain this five aggregate until their last death, final Nibbana. Buddha, Arahant, other venerables, they had to suffer with the physical illnesses. Ministering sick, ministering or regulation pains, there will be some discussions in the future. So I hope to discuss these things. So even Buddha also had to deal with the authentic suffering, but they were not infatuated. And they were not upset by these physical illnesses because they have eradicated this process, clinging. What is the application to this? So the threefold training is to be applied to this body. It means the psychosomatic unity. So morality to the body, it's very significant. And you should not be misunderstood that, so see, after Sila concentration, but when you are practicing Sila, then understanding is to be there. When you see the Sonadanda Sutta, it is really stated there that Sila cannot be practiced without wisdom. Wisdom cannot be practiced without Sila. Later we can discuss this for the understanding. Later we can come to the integration. So Sila, in this context, stands for bringing about behavioral transformation. And the concentration to stop fabricating feelings and the misperception, concentration. That's the samatha we discuss. And to see your volitional construction, mental construction, and to see how your consciousness is being functioned. So you need to have full mind. For that, you need to practice vipassana wisdom. Sila brings temporary solution. Concentration brings about periodical solution. If you want to get rid of the cancer, if you want to get rid of the schizophrenia forever, then you need to eradicate it. It means you are eradicating not the actual level, but you are eradicating your fabrication level. We cannot eradicate suffering forever. Instead of full eradication, Buddhism brings the knowledge to how to minimize suffering and maximize the well-being. So, sukha and dukkha, just like the two wheels of the cart, we need to balance it. Then we can have a gently riding, gently journey. How to minimize suffering? You can minimize suffering when you are understanding your monkey walking mind, your fabrication process, your falsifying way. Then you can minimize to the pain into actual pain. Then you can even overcome it having some medications and some spiritual trainings. Later we can discuss it. This is the eradication in the sense of Buddhist psychology. So, Venerable Nandachar, I think according to the time, I think time is up. We can give the chance. So we can discuss the rest of today's lecture as our second discussion. I think that's the better way. There are more things, but at the first day, I'm not going to discuss everything. Then you will not be seen in next lectures. So that's enough for the today. I think we can give the chance for our student to ask if they are having any. Yes, Venerable Nandachar, please.
Yes, so we open the floor for the participants. If there are any questions, please you can ask directly to Professor and mute your.
Professor, sir?
Yes, yes.
I'm getting one question.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Yes, this is pertaining the thing that you have told about the support and what you call like the unqualified people doing certain like medication, or not the medication, like using the meditation as a tool to support for the disorders. So
yeah.
Does it apply like because that according to that particular film that I have watched, that Beautiful Mind film, that lady who's that the wife of that particular professor is supporting that professor to sort of to live with that particular.
It's not me. It's not me. That's professor is not me.
No, sir. Well, I mean that
just for a joke, yes.
Professor John Nash, I suppose.
Yeah. Just for a joke, yes.
Yes, that Professor John Nash, that the lady who was that the wife of that professor is actually supporting as a kind of a supportive role. But suppose that there might be some kind of a time that there can be sort of people who are not quite qualified, who come into the play of as a kind of a parent, or else as a kind of a friend who can do the support to some kind of this kind of disorders. Especially just what I'm getting a question, sir, for mild disorders, will there be sort of some like basic people who doesn't have any qualifications or whatever to support as a kind of counseling process? Will that be a kind of a possibility? Is that okay to do a practice like that, sir? And
No,
that's my
it's not so good. It's not so good even for a mild levels, because that shouldn't be done really. That's why we are all the time emphasizing our students that when we just finding out these things at the very beginning, we have to be very careful. We need to understand our management process of the issue. What is the level really we can do? So that's why in my subject, I am trying to divide the issues into three things. How we can involve with the actual, authentic level. How we can really involve with the fabricated level. And we know that when it comes to the Angulimala serial killer, we did not confine our therapy only into the individuality. Even we think of what is the impact of this individual to the family setting. So if there is a schizophrenia person within the family, it affects to the other members. So this is the management, this is the regulation. So if we can find out this issue at the very beginning, so we can bring about very good, better solutions. So I think, so actually sometimes the family members, they are not the therapists, but as the therapists who are very qualified, they can guide them, they can lead them. This is the way how you can really involve. This is the issue. So if we are, my point is that very significant point in the Dhamma therapy is to investigate, to understand A to Z, every nook and phenomena of the issue first. Then we can bring about very good, satisfactory solution. So we should not let the unqualified people to involve in this process. Then it will once again fabricated. No? It will be fabricated. It will be worse. So that's the thing what really I am trying to explain with this discussion. More than the therapy is very important, as well as the therapy, the diagnosis process, and realizing the issue as it is and its stages, and bringing about this is the way, bringing about the therapies to these stages, levels of the issue is very important. So we have some experiences with my student. They are really the psychiatric doctors, and they have completed PhD in Buddhist psychology. Now we are involving with treating to this schizophrenic people, clients. But we have very good understanding what is the duty of Dhamma therapies and what is the duty of the psychiatric doctor. We have a joint problem. Even we are using meditation. We have very successful results. So in the future, I am going to invite my psychiatric doctor to discuss that how really we did this. So as you said, if we can understand at the very beginning the issue, then at the same context, we can bring about the real management process without letting it to be worse. That's my answer.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Helen from Hong Kong. Hello, Helen. Any questions from your side? After a long time, I see you, Helen. I think this may be the Helen from Hong Kong. Are you there? Okay. Okay, then, are there any questions?
Yeah, Venerable Nimala is waiting for a question.
Yes, sure.
Yes, Venerable, please.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this chance. Yeah, one your previous lesson, previous slides, you are explaining tribal training with the Samnya plus Sutta, but mostly I just understand you are focusing on the morality. How about the other thing?
Actually, you mean the concentration and the wisdom?
No, not in previous slides. I mean in the 5 PowerPoint, I think. No, go up. Yeah, that's one. But you use explain. No, not that one. Down one. Five PowerPoints. Number 5. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
No,
this one. Venerable, what is the slide? I just.
So slide number 5, sir.
Slide number 5.
Not this one. 5.
Yeah.
5.
This one, the 5, yes?
5.
Yeah, that one.
Is this one?
Yes, correct, sir.
Venerable Nimala.
No, not that one, sir.
This is the
No,
number
not
5.
One.
This is the number 5.
No,
then numbers.
Yeah, this one, sir. This one.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is you are explaining triple training regarding with the Samnyapala Sutta, but according to my understanding, you are mostly talking with only the morality. How about the other Samadhi and Panya? That's my question. Can you explain me furthermore? Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, then actually, if I am giving my answer to your question, getting some explanation from the other sutta, there is a sutta called Kuta. In this Kuta Sutta, storied building sutta, Buddha brings very good example. So in this sutta, what the Buddha says that if you want to construct a very beautiful house, firstly you need to lay a very strong foundation. Then you need to have a strong wall. And finally the roof and the stories. Without the foundation, laying a strong foundation, if you are going to have a very weak wall and sudden roof, it will collapse down. It means that the Buddhism is not just mere, the sila, it's the foundation. The practice or a training means the integration of three. That's what the Buddhism understand as path. So when it comes to the concentration, I think I explained that concentration is to bring about a quiet mind, to control the monkey mind, and to satisfy the suppressed wants and needs, and on the other way to control the ego ideal. It's a kind of a concept in the psychoanalysis and even in the Buddhism. So without giving a chance for our client to enjoy such wants and needs, sometimes maybe the unconscious level, keeping such unsatisfactory wants and needs, if we ask the client to bring your mind to the full mind, it cannot be done. That's why Buddha, in this very context, used the concentration. So if we have already settled down, calm down our mind, then we can get the full mind. So it becomes very impossible to get the full mind, suppressing our wants and needs in our mentality. So to bring about a calm down mind, so we need to have a satisfactory mind. This satisfactory mind is to be achieved through a spiritual progress. then we can come to. So Venerable, I think in our next discussion, I will fully concentrate. I will fully discuss these two things: the therapeutic value and psychological value of these two things.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
Then,
sir. Yes.
you are welcome, Venerable. So then, Venerable Nandachar, are there other questions? Other?
I think whenever yeah, yeah.
This is
Venerable,
Waranyana. So nice.
Venerable, Dr. Venerable
Long time
Varanyana,
no
how are
see
you?
you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Very happy to see you and hear your.
Now you are in Burma or Sri Lanka?
Yes, in Burma, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. See you in
Welcome.
Taiwan. Thank you so much. It's a short question, Venerable Nanda. So can you go to slide number 7? Last slide that for today. In this chart, in this slide number 7.
Slide number 7. This is the 7.
Got this. You pi aggregates are divided by here to 3/4 training and the 3 kilesa, right?
This is the structure used by the Venerable Buddha.
Yes, so the coach, please explains a little bit more about this. The feeling in a 5 aggregate, in the list 5 aggregate, one is divided in the concentration, right? 3/3/4 training in the concentration chart. So I just want to know more about this, the why concentration, because the feeling awareness is one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness too in the Vipassana. Which sense, I mean, in this chart, which sense that you want to highlight by concentration? So coach, please explain a little bit more, sir.
Yeah. Here, Venerable, the objective of this slides is to give you the knowledge to understand that this threefold training is to be applied to the psychosomatic mechanism. That's the first thing. So it has a practical sense. Then on the other way around, so see that, so when we are having, for example, when we are having physical illnesses, physical problems, so it's very difficult for us to concentrate our mind. So then the things also we need to tame down, we need to transform, we need to change, we need to bring about our physical condition into healthful level. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that actually these two components, I mean, as you asked, the concentration and wisdom, especially when it comes to the concentration, why Buddhism, what is the psychology in concentration? That's the thing we need to understand. So psychology in concentration, what we need to understand is that Buddha prescribed this concentration to hold this fabrication process. I mean, this is the starting point of the fabrication process. So for example, the sickness, when you get the feeling, painful feeling, unhappy feeling, so you misperceive. This is the starting point of the fabrication process. So so if you are getting some explanation from the other suttas, just like Vitakka Santana, Madhupindika Sutta, we can see that, we can understand that if so the nature is the sickness, so it is the unhappy feeling, unpleasant feeling, but when you misperceive it, so that's why earlier I explained you, getting some example from the sutta literature, that in between this feeling and the perception, Buddhism uses the function of the vijnana. In this context, vijnana plays significant role as the memory or the bringing about the messages from our previous or future expectation. So you are adding your previous memories, incident, and future expectation, and the present sensual excitement into this sickness or the feeling. Then you provocate it. provocate it. So this process is to be halt. So when we are concentrating on the very object, prescribed object, no chance to falsify or fabricate. This feeling in Buddhism mentioned, compared it to a sickness by adding our vijnana. Is here vijnana stands for memories or the messages which comes from the nervous system according to Western psychology towards the brain. So we are halting that process. Then no any chance for the provocation, fabrication. Why? Instead of infatuated being these two processes, now we have kept our mind on given object. It may be the breath. Now we need to concentrate on that. So when you are concentrating on that, instead of the unpleasant experiences, now we are enjoying the opposite of that. Then no provocation, no fabrication. That's my answer, Venerable Varanyan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. So, is there any questions from
Helen, any question from your side, Helen? No question?
Hi, Professor. I just want
Yeah.
one small, my personal experience.
Yes.
It's about the threefold training.
Yeah.
For the precepts, the morality and the sila, that
Yeah.
I find it easy to stick to the discipline and try to behave and sort of do all the right things. But then on the practice side, on the samadhi, I'm trying to go into the meditation level. The thing is, I found the initial peace and calmness. But then when I'm really settled down, my mind's really settled down, the problem is, then something really deep inside, all the worries or concerns, then it came up.
Yes.
Because normally during the day, I would never thought I would be probably too busy with something else, with our daily life. But then when I sit down and calm down in the very good meditation state, then this problem, one after another, will come up.
Yes.
And this is very difficult to overcome.
Yes. Yes, Helen, the thing is that actually until you get the mastership on observing your mind by yourself, it means our goal is to bring the full mind. Here, I think the time is the problem. I will explain it later in our other future discussions. So anyhow, Ellen, what you mention is very clear. In some suttas, it is very clearly stated there that though you have reached to some certain, not normal, some sort of certain higher enlightened level, still you are struggling with your some residues.
Yeah,
we call narcissistic residues, very subtle, but you have overcome your mentality. You have to some extent 50, let's say more than 50%. Still you are struggling, but you are enlightened. This is the psychology in Buddhism, what we need to see. So, for example, in our next lectures, we can discuss. That's why Buddhism brings about the mental topography. I will just explain you. This is the mental topography. So we are here. So slowly, gradually, gently, we need to bring our mind to the highest level. But when you are meditating, now you are at the first realm, sensual and sexual realm. When you are meditating, just say concentration, but you have brought your mind to some highest level, still you are struggling with the very subtle mental impurities until you come to the highest level. This is the nature. This is the nature. That's why psychology in Buddhism says that you need to yourself have to have two myself. First one is full mind. With this full mind, you observe your unhealthy myself. So to reach to that level, we need to come to Citta Anupassana and Dhamma Anupassana. Until you reach to the Dhamma Anupassana, until with your full mind you observe the residues or impurities, desire, hatred, delusion, so you cannot get a fully liberated level. But you have reached to some liberated, not some sort of enlightened level. This is the psychology in Buddhism. So that's why we need to come to the mindfulness. Until we come to the mind, full mind, and until we are enjoying the advantages of full mind. So there will be such sort of, such sort of, the weaknesses, but they are not weaknesses. They are some kinds of minor weaknesses within the enlightened mind. With reference to this enlightened level, what you have reached, you are actually having the benefits, but there will be some weaknesses. But you see yourself, you enjoy seeing even these weaknesses. It means now at the beginning you did not, but now you see these are the weaknesses. Now you are struggling. It means you have been developed, enlightened. It's a very good level, like appreciated level, like in the psychology of Buddhism. That's my answer, Helen.
Thank you, Professor. It's nice to see you again.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor. So I will read one question in the chat box before giving a chance.
Venerable, can you please repeat it for me, please?
Yeah, I will read it. Reverend Jingji from Taiwan. Said, may I ask about the case for taking sleeping pills to sleep? Some people are quite serious that they got up in the middle of the night to eat some food and they find a pie or rubbish on the ground when they wake up the next day and they don't even remember it. Why? It's kind of sleepwalking, sir. Another situation is that they are taking heavy dose of hypnosis in order to sleep. What is the reason for this kind of situation? Claustrophobias or how to help them? If they don't take a sleeping pill, they were easy to get angry. It's like drugs. This is a question from Reverend.
Yes. So with reference to things what we have so far discussed, things are not enough to give the answers to your question, but we need to digest some more things to give the answer. But so far, I will explain it's better way to give the answer to your question. There's a sutta called Pachalayana. It's the disorders, it's the issues of the some kinds of, the sleeping, if you have sleeping problems, sleeping disorders. So if you want to understand very clearly what are the disorders which are related to the sleeping issues and so on, so you can read that sutta. Then in that sutta very clearly such things are explained, why you are having some hallucinations, why you are having some kinds of nightmare, why you are getting angry. So for the time being, I can just explain the sutta Pachalayana, the issues of the sleeping disorders. Then you can see the root causes are explained there as the 5 hindrances. But in this context, using the 5 hindrances with reference to the sleeping issues of the Venerable Moggallana, Buddha gives a kind of psychological explanation. I think I will give you the answer later, because I think there are other students too. So we need to understand and we need to digest some fundamentals in Buddhist psychology. So after realizing and understanding such, I think we can discuss. I think Venerable Nandachar, it's better to get this question and keep in our chat box, then later we can give the answer. Because concerning the other students, if I'm going to give the answer in this context, it will be a little complicated. For the time being, since you are interested, you can get a clear answer for your question if you are trying to understand Pachalayana Sutta. Pachalayana. So there will be even a specific discussion even regarding the sleeping disorders, because very important for the modern scenario. So for the time being, Sutta is Pachalayana. Venerable Nandachara, if you can put the
Yeah,
Sutta
I
into the
understand
chat
it.
box.
I
Okay,
understand.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
good, good, good.
So I will read the comment of Matthew. He said, the way you explain how to transplant a new brain makes much more sense to me now. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, okay, you are
Matthew.
welcome. That's from the Matthew?
Yeah, Matthew.
Okay.
Do you have any question, Matt?
Okay, then Venerable, we can wind up. So
So
we
wait,
can continue the rest as the second lecture. In the...
There is one last question, sir, in the chat
Okay,
box.
sure.
Another indicator he sent for a long time. So can you give the distinction between Dharma therapy and maybe he is writing about psychiatry in simple terms?
So, okay, we are really, for the time being, I will, without going to the psychiatric and so on, for the time being, Dhamma therapy means dealing with fabricated and collaborative sufferings with the help of threefold training. But within this Dhamma therapy, we are not neglecting, rejecting authentic pains. Buddha also addressed to the authentic pain. So with the help of the psychiatry, getting the relevant therapeutic aspects of the threefold training, we are practice Dhamma therapy in the modern scenario. That's my answer.
Thank you, sir. So from here, we're gonna wind up today's session.
Okay. Thank you very much, Venerable. I think I should especially thanks to Venerable Nandachara, so helping me and supporting me a lot. So I think Venerable Nandachara encouraged me even for a long period of time to have this sort of discussions, and that's why. And anyhow, finally, our discussions led to the initiation of this, our mindfulness Center for Mindfulness, Citta Gavesi. So our main objective of this institution is to give you kind of academic knowledge, clear academic knowledge. And in the future, we are going to give you a kind of counseling support, counseling service, as well as to give you kind of training, practical training. So now I have sufficient PhD students, those who have completed Western psychiatry, and some Buddhist monks from the meditation centers, well-reputed centers. So now we have kind of good resource persons from the both side. I think time has come for us to get a new starting point. So in this center, what we are going to really discuss is the things which are related to early Buddhist teachings, With the early Buddhist teachings, we are trying to bring you the Vijjacharana, not only the theory, but also practice. This theory and practice as an integration will come to you in the future through our institution, Center for Mindfulness. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Good night.
For our future events, you can see on our.
Thank you, Venerable.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Venerable Nanda, did you say something lastly?
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you,
our
Professor.
future.
Thank you.
Yes, Venerable.
Venerable Nanda,
something. Our future events.
Yes.
You can follow our Facebook page, and then there will, for our future events, we will announce on our Facebook page. That's why please subscribe and follow us on Facebook for your
Thank you.
information.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Brother. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I'm come
Yeah,
to
okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Very
Thank
nice.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank